Coming up, one of rock's greatest vocalists tells us the first-hand account of a song that's really become part of rock folklore. This is really cool. First of all, her record label set up a publicity stunt that led to her being harassed by a radio promoter. So she was so outraged, so livid, she went straight to her hotel room and she wrote a seething rock masterpiece. This rocker tells us the story as well as several other original members from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame band. They also are part of it. It's coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If you remember being really excited around the holidays, for the only 3 TV channels that we had, and they were showing that special programming. You're going to love this nostalgic channel. The story straight from the legends, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Make sure to click the bell, do your thing, subscribe, all that good stuff. Also check our content on our Patreon page and our new merch. You're going to love it. So it's time for another edition of our series, Revelations, where iconic artists, legendary artists and bands reveal the finest details behind the songs and albums that have moved us from childhood to now. Today we're going to get the story behind a little ditty from the 70s called Barracuda from Ann Wilson of Heart.
Barracuda.
Also original band members, bassist Steve Fossan and the song's co-writer and drummer Michael Derosier. Now, years after Heart formed, they started to take over radio. It all started with their classic debut album, Dreamboat Annie. Heart's first single from that album was How Deep It Goes.
How deep it goes.
That didn't do very well. This is when it was released in Canada by the Small Mushroom label in 1975. But the second single, Magic Man, backed with How Deep It Goes. That was first picked up for radio play by a station in Montreal. This is while the band was on tour playing small club dates. In America, Crazy on You was the first single. Followed quickly by Magic Man. Which that would become Heart's first top 10 hit, and it started a spark that would lead to 20 top 40 hits and 9 platinum albums, and also induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I'm here tonight to induct an amazing band, and they also happen to be my hometown heroes, a band called Heart.
Many would argue that the crown jewel of Heart's classic catalog was the song that would come after they broke through with Crazy on You and Magic Man. I'm talking about the ultra rock classic Barracuda, the song we're going to talk about today. It came from a crazy incident that was started by Heart's label Mushroom. Ann Wilson's going to tell you the story. Her sister Nancy admitted a few years ago that she actually borrowed the riff from the band Nazareth. She said, and I quote, "We've been opening for a band called Nazareth in Europe and also for Queen. And Nazareth had a hit with Joni Mitchell's song that they covered in '73 called This Flight Tonight that had kind of that riff, so we borrowed from that. And we made it into Barracuda. And we saw the guys from Nazareth later, and they were really pissed. They said, you took our riff." But as Nancy would go on to say in this interview, everybody influences everybody. Back then, you borrowed from what you loved and you made it your own. She also talked about in that interview how the guitar tone is very specific, and she sometimes has a tough time recreating it in concert. Let's get into this interview with Ann Wilson and also Steve Fossan, original bassist, and Michael Derosier, who helped co-write the song. Before that explosion that became Dreamboat Annie and Heart, women were kind of pigeonholed to be soft rockers or singer-songwriters, kind of like Melissa Manchester, that kind of thing. And you guys kind of turned that on its head.
Yeah, at that time, it was really, truly a man's business.
Mm-hmm.
There were some women doing it. Joan Baez, Fleetwood Mac was just starting to come out. Judy Collins, and of course the disco divas, Donna Summer. But you had to choose between, there's this really strong feeling in the 70s where you couldn't be just a music fan. You had to choose between disco and rock.
Right.
And if you were a disco person, you were shunned by rockers and vice versa. You had to just declare yourself. So,
Yeah.
so there were no women rockers. You could be folk or disco, but
Yep.
not rock.
No rock.
I think Susie Quattro was in Detroit doing it,
Yeah.
but she was the only one. They would play one female an hour on the radio, and then
Right.
that was pretty much it.
So this ain't the end. I saw you again.
There's so many urban legends. That's what's cool about Heart, just
Yeah.
like the Beatles and other artists, where you talk about, some say it was a promoter, some say it was a reporter that backstage asked you about the picture and made a horrible sexist statement.
Influence, yeah.
And then that influenced.
Barracuda.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, there's so much opportunity for urban myth and rumor and everything. And now you introduce women into the picture, and that makes the pot even richer. Here we are backstage, we're opening up for the Kinks in Detroit. And we just had done our set, and so, as with most opening bands on the way up, after your set, your dressing room is just full of people, Back then they called them rack jobbers. And, guys whose job it was to glad hand and meet you.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
you say hi to them so that they have the will to go out, the instinct, and then they're behind you. So I was talking to this one guy, and he said to me, "So how's your love life going? How's your lover?" And I thought he was referring to my
Yeah.
man, my
Yeah.
boyfriend. And I said, "Oh, he's fine. Oh, everything's great, No, you and your sister. You know what I'm talking about? You and your sister.
Oh, geez.
And by today's standards, that's not such a shocking, insulting
Right.
thing. Incestuous lesbianism. But for back then, it made me livid because
Oh, yeah.
I love my sister, and we were purists, and we were almost missionary in our artistry zeal. We wanted to go out there and say our words and be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Not just seen as a couple of lesbian sisters, like fun to watch.
Yeah.
And so that pissed me off. I was honestly made really angry by that. So I went back to the hotel and wrote the words to Barracuda. And it was the first moment, too, I think I realized what kind of business we were in.
Right, no wrong, selling a song.
It's become one of your signature songs. I mean, it's been used in Charlie's Angels. And Glee did their version of it.
You had me down, 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 down on my...
Did Barracuda come first, kind of the title, or did it just pour out the lyrics? How did that come about?
The title came first. It's just a mean, slithering, dangerous thing.
Barracuda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The biggest accomplishment for me, and I think Nancy would say the same thing, is just keeping a hold of ourselves. Because the whole thing of, do you have number one hits? Do you not have number one hits? What do you look like? Who are you? What do you sound like? Are you popular? Or are you relevant? All that stuff can really stir up your mind, stir up your soul. If you can keep a hold of yourself, then I'd say that's an accomplishment.
Barracuda.
The galloping thing was just a kind of a beat and a pattern that we kind of horsed around with. I used to carry a tape recorder around and tape stuff on occasion. Mike thought it would be a good idea for us to record some of the ideas, a couple of the things that we had done. By way of Mike, I guess, Anna Nancy checked it out and thought, yeah, that's a good foundation for a song idea, so.
I saw you again today.
And then I think we probably did some of the weird time signature stuff, maybe in the kind of assembling all the parts. So yeah, just sort of bits and pieces kind of thrown together. And I think that song was was one of those things where when it was done, we kind of knew that it was pretty cool.
So it came really out of a jam?
Yeah, the initial idea for it, yeah.
Co-writer. He got co-writer credits on Barracuda.
Yeah.
Michael Derosier.
A drummer. Imagine that.
Well, I mean, that's a huge part of the song. It's just one of those songs that the second that you hear it, just the first note, you know exactly what it is.
It's something that we debated a lot when we were kind of discussing, hey, should a drummer be involved in writing, or should he get credit for some bit of input or whatever? And it's a very kind of, it's not, I always looked at it like, this is not Tin Pan Alley. It's not like a guy banging out stuff on a piano and some guy barking out some lyrics. A rock band has got a different dynamic.
Sure.
And I think the line between arranging and writing is very thin.
No, you're right.
So
a lot of bands like REM, for example, they just say all songs by REM because they realize that all of them have the input, because it can become a totally different song when you bring in a little kernel of an idea.
Yeah.
What do you remember about recording it once it got brought in and you started to put it down on tape?
Well, I did my part in Studio B, the little studio. I don't know. Did you do yours in the little studio or the big studio? Do you remember?
I think it was the big room, because we were trying to get more room sound in the drum mix.
Yeah.
I think I was by myself in there.
Yeah, I think you're right, because then we were in Studio B, the guitar players and bass, and Ann was doing the scratch vocal. At the time, to me, obviously the result of the lyrics was a great thing for us, so I can't really complain about it. But it seemed like a tempest in a teapot to me, because to think that two sisters were having a relationship like that, I don't think it would ever happen.
I think that Ann and Nancy's sort of in general, their view of the business part of record business, they didn't have maybe a lot of respect for a lot of the guys that were a certain level.
I've always read that Nancy was inspired by
This Flight Tonight.
No. Tell me about that. Is there any truth to that?
Well, it was Raj that came up with the kind of the all that stuff. And I can't swear to it. I never asked him, hey, did you think of that from This Flight Tonight, or from, because there's probably a half a dozen songs that do that, if not more. And This Flight Tonight, I mean, to get really technical about it, it's the way that the drums are, it's just straight. It's just quarter notes on the bass drum. And I'm doing a whole kind of syncopated thing. Kind of goes more with the guitar. So that in itself is way different. Although it's probably closer to Immigrant Song than it is This Flight Tonight. But it's still different than that, too.
Well, it's interesting because there are a lot of riffs that sound similar in classic rock, and that's okay. You can't actually copyright a riff. You can only copyright a melody and a lyric. You can't copyright a riff. So a lot of songs that sound the same with the riff, as far as I understand, from copyright law.
Yeah, Bonanza.
That's right.
Similar.
That's where we got it.
It's similar. So I mean, there's probably classical music that has elements of that in it too. So.
The double A side of your life that you leave to people
what would that be? What 2 songs would be on that? Because you talk about balance. What would those 2 songs be?
Double A side. Wow. Thanks a lot. Well, Barracuda would be on one side.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about Ann Wilson, one of the greatest voices ever, Ann Hart, in this legendary song. I mean, that riff, that classic vocal. What are your memories and your thoughts on the song and the band? What is your favorite period of Hart? 70s, the 80s, or the 90s? To hear the song, click on the link below. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. Be a part of this community. We'd love to have you, and you get all these cool interviews. Until next time, I'm telling you 3 chords and the truth, my friends. Talk to you soon.